I'd been with Kylan for 3 years, though sometimes it feels like a lifetime packed into a single long lesson. We first met at a friend's house party, the kind where everyone's half buzzed, talking over the music, pretending to be more interesting than they are. Kylan, though, didn't have to pretend. He spent the entire night bragging about his entrepreneurial mindset and showing off pictures from his solo trip to Thailand. He had this effortless charm, like he was the main character in his own movie. I remember thinking his confidence was magnetic. Somehow, we clicked that night, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. That first year felt like a dream. He was thoughtful, romantic, and made me believe I'd finally found someone who actually cared. He'd write me these long, poetic messages about how I'd changed the way he looked at love and life. He planned elaborate dates, surprised me with weekend getaways, and took me to restaurants I'd only ever seen on Instagram. For a while, I truly thought I was living a fairy tale, but there were signs, tiny cracks I didn't want to see. The biggest one was right in front of me the whole time. His social media. Kylan had an Instagram following of over 15,000 people. Every single day he posted something new. A motivational quote, a shirtless gym selfie, photos from trips he took for business, and long captions about chasing dreams and living without limits. But in 3 years of dating, he never once posted a picture of us together. Not one. At first I brushed it off. I'm not exactly a social media person myself. My posts are mostly my dog, a new recipe, maybe a photo from a hike. But as time went on, I started noticing the captions under his posts. Things like, living the single life has its perks, on a beach photo we took together, or freedom is everything on a hiking shot. One gym selfie even had the caption, the only commitment I need is to my goals. His bio said, entrepreneur, traveler, free spirit, no mention of me, no trace of a relationship. About 6 months ago, during dinner at his apartment, I finally asked him why he never acknowledged me online. He just smirked, that condescending, self-satisfied smile I'd grown to hate, and said, labels kill love, baby. What we have is beyond social media. I'm building a brand here. Then he added something about how his followers respond to freedom and independence. When I told him it made me feel like he was hiding me, he snapped back with, are you really going to be that girlfriend who needs validation from Instagram? I remember shrinking in my seat. He made me feel needy and insecure for wanting something completely normal. To be seen. So, I dropped it. But deep down, it stuck with me. Every time I saw him smile at a notification, or type something quickly before turning his screen away, that uneasy feeling grew stronger. Whenever I'd ask who he was texting, the answer was always the same. Networking connections, business stuff. Then, about 2 months ago, something changed. I was helping him rearrange his office when I noticed a notebook open on his desk. At the top of the page, in big letters, it said, Content Calendar. What made my stomach drop was a note underneath. Keep posts aspirational. Maintain single entrepreneur aesthetic. Female followers engage more with available men. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started watching closer. I saw how he'd angle his camera, so I was just out of frame in every photo. How he'd post our dinners, but never show me sitting across the table. Late-night texts kept lighting up his screen, and he'd tilt it away like it was instinct. 3 weeks ago, I'd had enough. I made a fake Instagram account under the name Lilith, a 25-year-old with a few cute lifestyle photos. I used pictures from my old college roommate's cousin, with her permission, since she lives in another state and doesn't use social media. Within hours of following Kylan, he followed back, and minutes later, I got a DM. Hey, beautiful. Love your vision. We should connect sometime. My stomach dropped, but I decided to play along. For 2 weeks, Lilith and Kylan chatted every day. He sent her the same poems he once wrote for me. He asked her to dinner at the same restaurant where we'd had our first date. He even told her the same lines he once told me, about being single and waiting for someone who understood his vision. When Lilith asked if he was seeing anyone, he said, I've been solo for years. Freedom is essential to my journey. Some women can't handle a man focused on growth. Last week, he invited Lilith to meet up. So I, as her, suggested the same place we'd booked for our 3-year anniversary dinner. He agreed immediately, saying he'd been dying to try that spot. That's when I made my plan. Tomorrow night, I'll show up for our anniversary dinner, but he'll think he's meeting Lilith. He has no clue that I know everything, that I've saved every message, every screenshot, and already told my best friend Stacy what's going down. I don't just want to end things. I want him to see exactly what he's done. I want to watch him squirm as he realizes the mystery woman he's been chasing is the same one he's been lying to. The reservation's at 7:30 at this fancy Italian place downtown. It's one of those restaurants with semi-private booths and mood lighting. Perfect for pretending to be someone you're not. He even sent me flowers at work this morning with a note that said, to many more years together. Meanwhile, he told Lilith to meet him at the bar at 7:15, 15 minutes before our actual dinner. His plan was simple. Meet her, flirt, maybe exchange numbers, then slide into dinner with me. I'm going to arrive at 7:10 and sit at the bar where I can see everything. I'll watch him walk in, scan the room for Lilith, and check his phone when she doesn't show. Then, at exactly 7:30, I'll walk up and greet him for our anniversary dinner. I've rehearsed the moment in my head over and over. Will he deny it? Try to twist it around on me? Beg for another chance? I've practiced what I'll say, but I still don't know how it'll actually go down. Yesterday, he texted asking what I'm wearing so we could coordinate. I told him I bought a new red dress. He said he couldn't wait to see me in it. An hour later, he texted Lilith asking what she was wearing. She told him blue. He replied, blue's my favorite color. I bet it brings out your eyes. That was the moment I realized just how little respect he had for me. I've already moved most of my things out of his apartment. While he was networking last weekend, I packed up my essentials, clothes, documents, all my skincare, and brought them back to my place. He hasn't even noticed. I've also backed up all our screenshots to the cloud. A small part of me wants to send them to his mom, who adores me and keeps asking when we're getting engaged, but another part just wants to be done with it. Stacy thinks I should record the confrontation, but honestly, that feels too cruel. I don't need proof anymore. I just need closure. I don't know what will happen after tomorrow night. 3 years of my life are about to end in one dinner. We talked about marriage, kids, buying a house, all of it. Now it all feels fake. Wish me luck. Edit. I'm sitting in my car outside the restaurant. His car is already here. He's early. He's never early. Not for me, anyway. He's early for her. I'm shaking, angry, but oddly calm at the same time. The next time I update this, it'll all be over. 3 years gone, all because he couldn't even pretend to be committed. He used to say, labels kill love. But the truth is, so does lying. He was wearing a brand new blue button-down, the exact color Lilith said she'd be wearing. Not the red we'd supposedly coordinated for our anniversary. That alone felt like betrayal number one. I stood quietly by the entrance where he couldn't see me yet, watching him through the crowd. A hostess walked over with a smile, asking if I had a reservation. I told her I was surprising someone, and nodded toward Kylan at the bar. She smiled wider, probably thinking I was about to pull off some sweet romantic gesture, if only she knew. For the next 15 minutes I just watched. He kept glancing at his phone, typing, waiting, clearly messaging Lilith. He checked his reflection in the mirror behind the bar, smoothed his hair, and ordered a whiskey neat, his go-to first date drink, not the glass of wine he usually shared with me. Everything about his posture screamed anticipation. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the time of our reservation, I walked up behind him. He was so focused on the door, waiting for her, that he didn't even notice me until I placed my hand on his shoulder. The shift in his expression was almost cinematic. Confusion, shock, then that fake burst of excitement he uses when he's trying to take control. "Milana," he said, jumping up so fast he nearly knocked over his drink. "You look amazing, but you're early for our reservation." I smiled, keeping my voice even. "No, I'm right on time. You're the one who's early." Then I tilted my head. "So, who are you waiting for?" His eyes gave him away before his mouth did. Pure. He fumbled some excuse about wanting to grab a drink before dinner, nothing more. The hostess came back just then to tell us our table was ready, saving him from having to elaborate. As we followed her through the restaurant, I noticed he kept looking back toward the entrance. "Expecting someone?" I asked. He shook his head, mumbling something about spotting a business contact. "Sure." Once we sat down, I tried to play along. Small talk, polite smiles, while he grew more and more distracted, sneaking glances at his phone under the table. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached across, grabbed his phone, and asked very clearly, "Were you looking for Lilith?" The blood drained from his face. He froze for a beat before whispering, "How do you know that name?" I didn't answer. I just pulled out my own phone, opened Instagram, and switched right there in front of him to the Lilith account. His jaw literally dropped as realization hit. "You catfished me," he said, as if I were the one who'd betrayed him. The audacity almost made me laugh. I explained calmly, firmly, that I made the profile because I was tired of his single lifestyle persona and the constant secrecy with his phone. I asked him why he'd tell Lilith he'd been solo for years when we'd been together for 3. That's when the deflection began. First, he claimed it was just part of his brand, that pretending to be single helped him grow his following and attract clients. When I didn't bite, he pivoted, said he was actually testing me because he suspected I was cheating. When I laughed at that ridiculous lie, he tried again. Then came the gaslighting. He told me I was overreacting, that chatting with other women didn't mean anything, since he never met them in person, that I was controlling and insecure for monitoring his social media. I cut him off mid-excuse. I laid my phone on the table, screen facing him, and started scrolling through our messages as Lilith. His recycled poems, the anniversary dinner scheduled as a first date with him, and his clear statement that he was single. That's when the tone. He switched to damage control. His voice softened, his eyes filled with fake regret. He said he messed up, but insisted it was just online, that it never got physical. He said he loved me, but had issues with attention and commitment. He even let out a shaky breath and tried to cry, muttering something about therapy and self-improvement. I looked him dead in the eyes and asked, "How many others have there been?" He paused for a second, long enough for me to know the truth, then said, "Maybe some harmless flirting, but nothing serious. Never physical." I didn't believe a word. The waiter appeared then, awkwardly hovering with menus. I didn't even look at them. "We won't be staying," I said, and stood up. Kylan followed me out, his composure unraveling with every step. By the time we reached the parking lot, he was begging, literally begging, me not to end things. He said we'd worked too hard for 3 years to throw it away over one stupid mistake. He promised to delete Instagram, to change, to be better. He even claimed he'd been planning to propose during some upcoming trip next month. We had no such trip planned. I opened my car door and told him flatly I'd come by tomorrow to pick up the rest of my things. He kept talking, reaching for me, saying we needed to talk more, that I couldn't just leave. But I could, and I did. When I got home, my phone was blowing up. 37 missed calls. More than 50 messages ranging from pitiful apologies to angry accusations. The last one I read before blocking him said, "You set me up. That's not love. You clearly wanted out." I thought I'd feel triumphant, or at least relieved. Instead, I just felt exhausted. 3 years wasted on someone who built his entire identity around being authentic, while lying to my face the entire time. But it didn't even end there. At around 2 in the morning, I got another notification, from Instagram. Kylan had unblocked the Lilith account and sent a new message. He said he knew it was me the whole time, and was playing along to teach me a lesson about trust. According to him, my little test proved I didn't trust him, and now he couldn't trust me. I didn't respond, just took screenshots of everything. This morning, I texted his roommate, Shane, to ask when I could pick up the rest of my stuff. Shane called right away, sounding confused. Apparently, Kylan had told him we had a minor argument, but were working things out. When I told him the truth, Shane was stunned and told me to come at noon while Kylan would be out playing basketball. When I arrived, Shane helped me carry boxes to my car. He looked uncomfortable but kind. Then, while we were packing, he mentioned something that made my stomach turn. He said Kylan had been bringing women over when I was out of town. Women he assumed were just friends. Kylan was in a relationship. Shane hadn't suspected anything until that moment. As we carried out the last few boxes, he hesitated, then said there was something else I needed to know. Apparently, Kylan had a Vegas trip planned for next weekend, one he'd never mentioned. Shane had seen the hotel confirmation come through the shared printer. 1 room, 2 guests. When he asked about it, Kylan brushed, saying it was a last-minute right? Because all serious business opportunities require 1 bed. I thanked Shane for his help, loaded the last of my things, and started backing out of the parking lot. Just as I reached the exit, Kylan's car pulled in fast, cutting me off and blocking the driveway. He jumped out, angry, and demanding to know what I was doing at his place. I rolled down the window and said calmly, "I got my stuff, and Shane knows everything." The look on his face shifted instantly, confusion, then rage, then fake concern. He started rambling that Shane was lying, that he'd always been jealous of our relationship, that I couldn't trust anything he said. I told Kylan to move his car, or I'd call building security. After a few tense seconds, he finally backed up, but as I drove off, he followed me for several blocks, calling from different numbers each time I blocked him. When I got home, I found out he'd taken things even further. He'd messaged Stacy on Instagram, trying to convince her that I was struggling mentally, and had misunderstood our relationship. Stacy, bless her, shut him down immediately, but it was clear he was starting to rewrite the story, casting himself as the poor victim who'd been wronged. And sure enough, later that night, I saw his new Instagram post. His bio now said, "Healing from betrayal. Trust is everything." The photo? A black and white close-up of his face with a caption that read, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them." Like he was the one recovering from heartbreak. The performance would have been impressive if it wasn't so pathetic. I wasn't planning to tell his mom what had happened, but she called me that afternoon, sounding worried. She said Kylan had been posting strange, emotional things online and asked what was going on. I told her we'd broken up but didn't go into detail. Then she mentioned he'd told her I had gone crazy and created fake accounts to spy on him. That's when I decided she deserved the truth. I explained everything, the fake profile, the messages, the lies. She went silent for a few seconds, then sighed and apologized on his behalf, saying she'd talked to him. She sounded embarrassed, which honestly made me feel bad for her. An hour later, Shane texted me again. He said Kylan was now telling anyone who'd listened that I was unstable and obsessive, that I'd manufactured the entire situation because I was afraid he'd break up with me. He was even showing people screenshots of our texts that he'd edited to make me look irrational. I wasn't worried about my reputation. Anyone who actually knows me would see through his nonsense. But I was starting to worry about how far he might take this. So I decided to stay with Stacy for a few days, just to have some space and feel safe. For everyone wondering whether I've sent the screenshots to his followers or exposed him publicly, no, I haven't. As tempting as it would be to blow up his image, I'm not going to stoop to that level. People like Kylan eventually destroy themselves. His mask is already slipping. Edit. A few hours ago, he posted again. This time, a series of stories about forgiveness and understanding the full story. Then he actually tagged me in an old throwback photo of us from a year ago with the caption, "Missing what was real." I untagged myself immediately and made my account private. The sheer audacity of this man, after everything, is unbelievable. Does he really think I'd fall for another round of emotional manipulation? It's exhausting at this point. Second update. It's been 1 week since the restaurant conference, and I wanted to give an update because so many of you have been following this mess and offering. To those who said Kylan wouldn't just accept the breakup, you were right. After staying with Stacy I went back to my apartment I was wrong. That afternoon, my sister Lena asking if I was okay as Kylan had messaged her on Facebook. He told her he was worried about my mental health and wanted her to check on me because I was making up stories. Lena and I are incredibly close, so she knew right away that something was off. I told her everything, from the fake account to the restaurant, and she was furious. Apparently, Kylan hadn't stopped with. He'd also reached, including my dad. Later that evening, my dad called, confused and asking why Kylan was telling him to stage an intervention. I spent nearly an hour explaining everything and sent him the screenshots from the Lilith account. His tone changed fast, from concern to pure anger. He told me if Kylan ever contacted our family again, he'd take care of it personally. The next morning, I arrived at work to find a massive bouquet of red roses on my desk. The card read, "We need to talk. 3 years deserves more than this." I immediately took the flowers to the break room for anyone else to take and tossed the card in the trash. My coworker, Giovanna, saw me and asked what was going on. I told her briefly, and she said the guy who dropped off the flowers had been acting really intense. He'd asked her questions about my work schedule, when I came in, when I left, if I was seeing anyone new. That's when my stomach turned. I texted Shane again, asking if Kylan had mentioned anything about seeing me. He called right away, his voice strained. He said Kylan had been staying up all night, ranting about how I'd ruined his brand and destroyed his reputation. He'd canceled that mysterious Vegas trip and was now inviting random women over almost every night. Shane said Kylan even told someone on the phone that he was going to fix things with Milana one way or... Shane sounded genuinely worried. He said he was already looking for a new place to live because the situation was getting too uncomfortable. Then, Wednesday afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw Kylan's car parked at the far end of the lot. He was sitting inside, staring straight toward the end. I froze, turned around, and went right back into the... I asked one of my male coworkers to walk me out later. When we finally went to my car, Kylan was gone. There was a folded piece of paper I didn't even bother reading. I just threw it straight into the trash. I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing his tactics were working. But by Thursday, I was seriously considering filing for a restraining order. I wasn't sure if what he'd done so far would actually qualify, so I called a local legal aid office to ask. They told me that while his behavior was definitely concerning, I'd need clearer documentation of explicit threats or repeated unwanted contact after telling him to stop. So I started keeping a log. Every message, every call, every coincidental encounter. I saved screenshots, recorded dates and times, even noted witnesses when I could. It felt strange documenting my own life like evidence, but something told me I'd need it. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Kylan's mother. She sounded tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from loving someone who keeps disappointing you. She apologized for her son's behavior and said she was trying to convince him to get therapy. She admitted she was deeply worried about how he handles rejection and warned me that he might not stop contacting me anytime soon. I appreciated the concern, but I wasn't about to get pulled back into Kylan's orbit through his family. I kept it polite but short, thanked her, and ended the call. Then came Friday night. The moment everything escalated. Stacy and I were having dinner at a restaurant downtown. We were halfway through our meal when I froze mid-bite. Kylan had just walked in, hand in hand with another woman. They were seated directly across the room, perfectly positioned where I could see them, or he could see me. This wasn't a coincidence. Stacy had posted a picture of our appetizer to her Instagram story an hour earlier, tagging the restaurant's location. Kylan had clearly seen it and decided to stage his. He made sure I noticed them. Loud laughter, exaggerated smiles, over-the-top affection, brushing her arm, leaning close, glancing my way every few minutes to see if I was watching. The poor woman had no clue she was being used as a prop in his latest manipulation attempt. I refused to play along. Stacy and I kept our conversation light, pretending he wasn't even there. After about half an hour of getting zero reaction from me, Kylan stood up and headed for the restroom, conveniently choosing the path that took him right past our table. As he walked by, he leaned down and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "This could still be us if you'd stop being so dramatic." That was it. I'd had enough. I stood up, faced him, and said clearly so there'd be no confusion, "Leave me alone. Don't contact me, my friends, or my family again. We're done. If you keep this up, I'll file a restraining order." His face flushed deep red. He muttered something about me making a scene over nothing, then stormed out, leaving his date sitting there looking utterly confused. Stacy and I paid the bill and left shortly after. The woman looked so embarrassed I almost wanted to warn her what she was in for. By Saturday morning, Kylan had found a new angle. He posted this long, melodramatic Instagram caption about forgiveness and misunderstandings in relationships. Then came the stories. Old photos of us with captions like, "Missing the real connection we had," and "Sometimes people lash out when they're hurting." The man was trying to rewrite history, turning our breakup into some tragic, mutual miscommunication. It was nauseating. But Sunday brought something. I was pushing my cart through the grocery store when I collided with someone at the end of the aisle. It took me a second to recognize Kellen, Kylan's ex. I'd seen her photos before, back when he'd shown me pictures from his past relationships. She gave me a sympathetic smile and said, "I saw his recent posts. I figured you might need a heads up." Kellen told me that after she broke up with Kylan 2 years ago, right before he met me, he'd spent months trying to get her back. He showed up at her work, harassed her friends, even dated one of her coworkers just to stay in her orbit. She said many of the romantic gestures I thought were unique. The poems, the grand dates, even certain phrases, were all recycled from their relationship. Those beautiful, original poems he wrote for me and later sent to Lilith, they were first written for her. I stood there stunned, clutching my cart handle like I might fall over. I asked why she was telling me this. She said she wished someone had warned her back then, and she wanted me to know what kind of escalation to expect. She eventually had to move apartments and change her number just to make him stop contact. I walked out of that store feeling oddly validated and deeply unsettled. Everything about my relationship suddenly felt counter. The gestures, the words, the way he looked at me, all of it recycled material in his ongoing performance of the perfect. Then came. I woke up to dozens of notifications. Overnight, Kylan had gone on a full-blown posting spree. He shared heavily edited screenshots of our entire chunk. In the captions, he claimed I'd created the Lilith account because of severe insecurity and trust issues, that he'd been patient and understanding until I lashed out. He ended the series with, "I'm not posting this to hurt Milana, but because I care about her and hope she gets the help she needs." I wanted to unleash everything, the real screenshots, the messages from his mom, even Kellen's warning, but I knew that responding publicly would only fuel his narrative that I was obsessed. So instead, I called his mother again. I told her what he was doing, how he was spreading lies and damaging my reputation. She sounded horrified and promised to deal with it immediately. 3 hours later, every post about me disappeared, and his profile went private. This morning, Shane texted me with the final piece. Apparently, Kylan's mom showed up at their apartment the day before and absolutely lost it on him. Shane said she threatened to cut him off financially if he didn't stop harassing me or posting about me online. According to Shane, Kylan was furious, but quiet, which, for him, is a rare combination. For now, things have gone still. I've locked down all my privacy settings, warned my office, and told my friends what to do if he tries to reach out again. For the first time in weeks, I feel like I can breathe. Cautiously. If anything major happens, I'll update again. And to everyone who's been following this, thank you. Seriously. Having people remind me that I'm not crazy has been the one thing keeping me grounded through this surreal mess. Edit. Just as I was about to post my last update, Stacy called. Apparently, Kylan had just announced on Instagram that he was moving to Miami next month for a major business opportunity. I honestly couldn't tell if it was true or just another attention-seeking stunt. Still, the idea of him being hundreds of miles away sounded like a blessing. Whether Miami wanted him or not was another. Last update. Hey Reddit. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I wanted to wait until things truly settled before sharing an update. So much has happened that I barely know where to start. But here goes. First off, yes, Kylan actually did move to Miami, but not for some glamorous business opportunity like he'd bragged about online. The real story turned out to be far more humiliating, for him at least. About 3 weeks after my last update, Shane reached out again. We met up for coffee, and he filled in all the blanks about what went down after I cut contact. According to him, Kylan's so-called entrepreneur venture was practically dead. His entire Instagram persona, the expensive dinners, the trips, the clothes, was being bankrolled by his parents, mainly his mom. When she showed up at his apartment threatening to cut him off if he didn't stop harassing me, she also demanded to see his business records. That's when she discovered the truth. He only had 2 tiny clients and had been using business expenses to fund his lifestyle. All those networking trips, paid for with his parents' money, the luxury gifts and brand partnerships, pure fiction. When his mom realized she'd been financing her son's fake image, she snapped. She gave him an ultimatum. Either move back home to Ohio and work for his dad's company, or move to Miami, where his uncle could give him a real job that involved actual accountability. She offered to cover the move and 3 months' rent, and after that, he was on his own. So much for the major business opportunity. It was basically his parents' last ditch at him grow up. Shane said Kylan was furious, ranting about how no one understood his vision and how mediocrity was trying to hold him back. But since he had no other options, he packed up and, of course, before disappearing, he tried one final stunt. One Sunday morning, while I was at brunch with Stacy, my neighbor George texted me saying some guy had been knocking on my door for 10 minutes, then just sat in the hallway outside my apartment. I immediately knew who it was. George said the guy eventually left a letter under my door. I told him to toss it, but he'd already opened it, thinking it might be important. He texted me a photo of it instead. 8 pages, handwritten. It was filled with manipulative drivel about how I'd been the only person who truly believed in him, and how his move to Miami was all part of his plan to become the man I deserved. He blamed me for everything, said that my test with the fake profile proved I never trusted him, which forced him to react badly. The last line read, "When I make it big in Miami, you'll regret how you handled things. My door will always be open when you realize what you threw away." Even in his farewell letter, he couldn't take an ounce of responsibility. Somehow it was still my fault. Somehow he was still the prize. I told George to throw it out, thanked him for the warning, and tried to move on. But of course, that wasn't the end. About a month after he moved, I was at a work happy and my phone started buzzing nonstop. Dozens of Instagram notifications all at once. Kylan had tagged me in 20 old photos of us together, posting them one after another like some twisted highlight reel. The captions were a cringe-inducing mix of self-pity and delusion, missing what was real. The one who got away. Sometimes you don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. I immediately untagged myself and blocked his account, but it was too late. Coworkers and friends had already seen the posts. A few even messaged me asking if we'd gotten back together. Even my dad called, worried that Kylan was acting up. That was my breaking point. I still had his mother's number saved, so I called her. She answered right away, sounding absolutely drained. I explained what Kylan had done, how it was affecting my job, and how I just wanted peace. She apologized over and over and promised to deal with it. The very next day, every post was gone. Later that afternoon, I got a text from her saying she'd had a come-to-Jesus talk with both Kylan and his uncle. They told him flat out, if he contacted me again, in any way, his uncle would fire him, and his parents would cut off every last dollar of support. A few days later, I bumped into Shane again. He told me something that made my stomach turn, but also weirdly clarified everything. Before Kylan left, Shane had found one of his old notebooks. Inside were scripts. Actual written-out scripts, full conversations, date ideas, and manipulative techniques. He'd outlined which compliments worked best on which types of women, which poems to use depending on personality, even how to adjust his voice and posture to seem more sincere. Shane said one page had a literal flowchart showing how to respond to different emotional reactions when reciting his poems. That explained everything. Why Kylan always seemed to know the perfect thing to say. He wasn't emotionally intelligent. He was rehearsed. A man performing authenticity he didn't possess. Then yesterday I got something unexpected in the mail. A certified letter from a law firm in Ohio. For a second, my heart sank. I thought he was trying to sue me for something absurd. But when I opened it, it wasn't from him. It was from his parents' attorney. The letter stated that Kylan had agreed to cease all direct or indirect contact with me and included a signed statement from him acknowledging that further communication would have legal consequences. I'm not naive enough to believe a document who he is, but it's something tangible, proof that his family finally understands how serious this is, and if he ever tries to reach out again, I'll have legal grounds to protect myself. To everyone who's been following this story, thank you. Your advice, your empathy, and your words of support genuinely kept me grounded through one of the strangest, most exhausting chapters of my life. Final edit. Yesterday, while cleaning out my closet, I found a small box of Kylan's old things, a couple of shirts and some toiletries he'd left behind. I dropped them straight into the donation bin without a second thought. No anger, no sadness, just closure. For the first time in a long time, I finally feel free.